Wonder what's for lunch. Ooh. Breakfast of Champions. Welcome back to the Mr. Dabruta channel, the premier D-list YouTube channel that gets probably less than 1,000 views per video. Alright, well, today we're cooking some bearings. So I used some Super 77 to adhere this sandpaper. This is 320 grit. So I've tried like 1200 grit, and that took forever to get any kind of results of flattening out the surfaces for the seals. Then I tried 600 grit, and that again took way too long. So I'll try a little more aggressive sandpaper, 320. Here's some WD-40. This is like 600 grit here. It worked a little bit of flattening the surface out. Just go back and forth nice and easy. Just let the weight of this thing sand itself down. You see right here is kind of a high spot. Here's the bottom of this. How pretty warped it is. I mean, it's only doing about right through here, only honing this down. So this thing's pretty warped. So we'll just keep flipping it over and honing it and see how it goes. So I'm gonna hone this out. I've got the top pretty well flattened out in the bottom and all these surfaces that were warped. And spray the cylinder really well. Just assembling these new pistons. Put some green slime on here. Assembly lube on there. Make sure it's lubed up before it even starts up, so there's no dry starts and you don't have to worry about your motor or your pump self-destructing. Push down the wrist pin a bit. Put a little more lube in here. And just snap this little retaining clip in there, hopefully without losing it. I'm sure this thing will fly across the room. This isn't seated all the way. You can kind of tell. Hard to tell with this shitty lighting. But you got to make sure. Let me see if I can get the light in here. That this ring is in there all the way. This ring will pop out and just chew up the living shit of your cylinder. There. Now it's seated in the little recess. Push down this pin. Do the same. Put a little bit of assembly lube on there. There we go. Keep your thumb over it so it doesn't pop off. Make sure that's seated in there. There's the second piston. Put some Hulk jizz on this. Hulk jizz. And some, use ample amounts so nothing gets bound up when you first start this thing up. The schematic has the arrow going that way, towards the front of the pump.
Ding by the done, ding by the done, ding by the done.
So I've got a 7/8 inch socket that fits the bearing race perfectly, and just gently tap that on there. So now I've got the bearing on there, and the piston on there. Put some of this lube in the bearing. Put some lube on this crankshaft here. So I have an 1-inch inner diameter pipe which fits this bearing race perfectly. It's going slowly but surely. There we go. Now I've got the whole crankshaft assembled. Got to fish this through here and put this piston all the way back. Seat that rear bearing in there. Put this like this so it'll stay there. Gonna put some assembly lube in this front bearing. I've got a new oil seal. We'll put some assembly lube on here. Put some on here. This hole goes on the bottom. Put some more lube in here, just so the bearing slips in there. Before I put the front plate on, I want to clean this with some SD alcohol or acetone or parts cleaner on a rag, and put a little bit of RTV on here. Clean this outer surface of the faceplate. Go. So I've got some ultra red high temp gasket maker. Just a very fine bead of RTV on there. The faceplate. Put a dab on the threads. Hand start these screws so you're not cross threading them. So these bolts have to be torqued down to 140 to 160 inch-pounds. Well, inch-pounds to foot-pounds. At 150 inch-pounds would be 12.5 foot-pounds. So I've got my torque wrench set to 12.5 foot-pounds. Clean off these mating surfaces with the clean cloth with some SD alcohol on it. So put some assembly lube on the pistons and on the rings. Then with these rings, you got to make sure they are lined up. These pistons have an arrow on it that should face forward of the pump, and the specs say the first ring should be 180 degrees from this mark. The second ring should be 180 degrees from the first ring. And then this top ring should be 90 degrees out from the other rings. So I'll set the rings on all of the other piston as well. Lube this one up. Then I'll put some assembly lube on this. And clean the mating surfaces off with some SD alcohol or acetone, parts cleaner on a rag. Put the seal on here. The cylinder wall has a little, I guess, chamfer or taper to it so that the rings will slip in easily. All right, finally got the pistons in there. Just kind of Walk it in there. Got to be very careful when inserting these pistons because you can't really use a piston ring compressor, and you can really jack up your oil ring real fast. There we go. Let me clean this surface off. Some acetone and a rag. Put a little bit of assembly lube in this where the seal sits, just to keep the seal fresh. And place the O-ring in there. And then this goes on there like that. Put a little assembly lube in the seal crevice right here. And put a little bit of Loctite onto the threads. Slide it in there. One trick to get this head on there and not warp it anyway is, since these bolts call for 20 foot-pounds, I'll set my wrench for 10 foot-pounds, tighten all these down to 10 foot-pounds, make sure everything's tight on there, then go up to 15 pounds. $16, $17, $18. I'll torque these about halfway between 15 and 20. So now I have a rebuilt pump. Tomorrow I'll put all the plugs and sight glasses back in, mount it on the tank, fill it with oil, and do a 30-minute break-in.